week 7 of the fantasy football season, and he has tight end starts and sits of every matchup this week. The first matchup, New Orleans Saints at the Arizona Cardinals. So right here, Thursday night football game between these two teams here, and I got Taysom Hill as a start. We've seen him as a gadget guy over the last couple weeks, and he qualifies at quarterback and tight end in fantasy leagues. So we know tight end's a very weak position in fantasy football this season. So Taysom Hill is a guy to put in at tight end. I don't think it's the worst things in the world. We know he's not going to catch the ball, but a lot of rushing we could see possible. A couple throws in this ball game, and he's a guy that could get 8-9 fantasy points. I got him as a start. The real tight end on this New Orleans Saints team, Adam Trautman, he hasn't done much except one touchdown in week 5. Besides that, he's been quiet, and he's a tight end I would sit this week. Now Zach Ertz, one of the best tight ends in all pro football and fantasy football this season here. Now with Hollywood Brown out for 6 weeks here, he's going to get more targets, I believe, as Zach Ertz. Even though I know they traded for Anderson and Hopkins is off suspension, but he's still a guy that's going to make plays. He's still a top 5 tight end this season so far in fantasy points, and he's a guy I'm starting this week. Now to the New York Giants at the Jacksonville Jaguars. So Daniel Bellinger, he's come up over the last few weeks here with 2 touchdowns in the last 2 games here. So Bellinger and Daniel Jones are getting more of a rapport. He's starting to play more snaps here as Bellinger, but he's still a guy, I don't know, in this ball game if I could really trust him. You definitely could pick him up and see what happens if you already haven't in your fantasy leagues off the wire. But this week, one more week, I got to see it from Bellinger before I'm going to say he's borderline or a starter. Now to the Jacksonville Jaguars side of things, Evan Ingram I have as a start this week. And Evan Ingram's been pretty decent this year in PPR leagues. And now it's a revenge game versus former team. You always like to see that. And they're targeting him and Christian Kirk as the top 2 targets over there in Jacksonville. So this week versus former team, home game for the Jaguars. I think everything lines up pretty good here for Evan Ingram, and especially with bye weeks and the bad tight end position. I got him as a start. Now, Indianapolis Colts at the Tennessee Titans. I don't like any of these tight ends. Mo Alley-Cox, we've seen flashes from him on and off over the last few seasons, but he's been an inconsistent guy and a guy that's not fantasy value right now. He's available in 99% of fantasy leagues for a reason, and he's a sit this week. In Austin Hooper, I know he had that great season a few years ago with the Atlanta Falcons, but he hasn't been the same since, and he's more of a blocker and a guy that's just a decoy at this point, running routes. Yeah, he could get a red zone target for a touchdown or whatever, but this week I have him as a sit. Now to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Carolina Panthers. So Cade Otton, his workload's getting bigger as the weeks go on, and Cameron Brate, the scary hit he took in that ball game, got carted off in that one, but no damage luckily for Brate. So in this one, no matter what, I think he's going to get a workload. Even if Brate somehow comes back, but I think they're going to have him sit out this one, but Otton's a borderline start either way. Now Cameron Brate, I have him as a sit this week. Even if he plays somehow after the scary hit and getting carted off, I don't think he's going to do much. I know he had a few targets in the red zone in that week 6 matchup, but right here, he's a sit and a guy you can't count on. And now to the Panther side of things, no one in this game on the receiving end is doing anything for this Panther team. DJ Moore has been a bust. Robbie Anderson wanted out. They traded him out. And Christian McCaffrey, or bust, it's pretty much been for this Panther offense. So Ian Thomas, he's been a non-factor for fantasy, and he's a sit this week. Now to the Detroit Lions at the Dallas Cowboys. So right here, Dak Prescott might come back in this ball game here, and that could be good news for Dalton Schultz, but I'll get to Schultz in a minute. TJ Hawkinson, he's had one monster game this season, the rest mediocre to poor ball games, but right here, he's one of the top targets over there in Detroit. Amon St. Brown, obviously the number 1 guy in the passing game here for this Detroit Lion team, but we don't know 100% if he's going to play, but I'm sure he is after coming off the bye. So Hawkinson, he could go out there, make a few plays, possibly find the end zone in this one, and I got him as a start, especially with the buys in a weak position. And Dalton Schultz in this one, he was banged up, missed last week's game. I know Dak Prescott and him had a great rapport last season, and Dak, it looks like he's going to return in this game, but Dalton Schultz ain't healthy, and he's done nothing so far this season, so I can't count on him yet. I got to see stuff from him, and he's a sit. Now to the Packers at the Commanders. Robert Tonyan, I got him as a start this week, and he's one of the only guys that Rodgers might trust right now. Besides him and Lazard, Cobb is out multiple weeks with an ankle injury, and Tonyan coming off a monster ball game, 10 catches, 90 yards in that game versus the New York Jets. So right here at the Commanders, I don't think he's going to get 10 catches but he's a guy who's been on the fantasy radar over the last few weeks, and he finally broke out in week 6. So he's a tight end you definitely start this week. Now to the Commander side of things, Carson Wentz out 4 to 6 weeks. Logan Thomas, he hasn't been healthy. And now with Taylor Heineke in there at quarterback, I don't think Thomas will do much. And we got to wait and see what Thomas does. So this week here, you don't want to play him. And I got him as a sit. Now to the Atlanta Falcons at Cincinnati Bengals. So right here, Kyle Pitts, it hasn't been a great year for Pitts here. I know he came off injury and did find the end zone, but in that one, he only had 25 yards. So right now, this week here, I think this Bengal defense is going to zero in trying to stop Pitts. So Pitts I got as a borderline option. I'm sure he's going to crack my top 12 in tight ends this week once I put that together, coming out tomorrow most likely. But anyway, Kyle Pitts, borderline option. We haven't seen much from him. And Marcus Mariota, he's run happy right now, it looks like, over there for the Falcons. So he's borderline. And Hayden Hurst, he didn't have a great game last week as Hurst, but I thought he would have a good one versus the New Orleans Saints, but that just didn't happen. But this week, I'm going back to the well one more time here with Hayden Hurst versus one of his former teams in the Atlanta Falcons, where they obviously drafted Pitts and put Hurst on the back burner. So you're not going to want some revenge in this game if he'll admit it or not. And this week here, it's a good matchup. This Atlanta Falcon team really don't stop anybody in their secondary. So right here, I think he has a good game as Hurst, and I got him as a start. Now to the Browns at the Baltimore Ravens. I like both tight ends in this one. And Njoku, I'm not a big Njoku guy, but with the landscape of tight end this season in fantasy football, a lot of tight ends not doing anything, and it's an inconsistent position except the first 4 or 5 guys this season here. I'll give Njoku the nod once again. He's been getting 8 or more fantasy points over the last 3 weeks of the season, so I'll give him a start in a division matchup. Now to Mark Andrews, what could I say? He's matchup proof. Top 1 or 2 tight end each and every week here. And he's a guy that'll get 80, 100 yards weekly and find the end zone. So he's an obvious start. Now to the Jets and the Denver Broncos. Tyler Conklin, first 3 weeks of the season, was great for PPR leagues with 10 or more fantasy points in each ball game. But now since Zach Wilson came back in week 4, Conklin's been non-existent. And CJ Uzomah's been back in the lineup as well, getting some snaps. So he's an easy sit. This week's Conklin. Now to the Broncos side of things. He was the big guy for this Bronco team in the preseason. A lot of flash and stuff. But he was a healthy scratch, so he didn't even make the list. And now Greg Dulcich, he scored a touchdown in the Week 6 ball game for this Bronco team versus the Chargers. But I got to see a little more out of him. I know a lot of people went to the wire and picked him up this week, but I'm not going to throw him in there right away versus a good Jet defense, even though we did see Tanyan go 10 for 90 in last week's game. But Dulcich, I got to see one more week out of him before I could count on him. And Russell Wilson's been inconsistent getting the ball to his playmakers anyway, so I got him as a sit this week. Now the Houston Texans at the Vegas Raiders. So O.J. Howard, he had a big week 1, and ever since then he hasn't done anything. So this week here, I'm not going to count on him. This offense has been very inconsistent, especially in the passing game here for Houston, and I got him as a sit. Now to the Raiders side of things. Waller, I know he's been a top 5 tight end drafted coming into the season, but he's not putting up numbers. He was banged up at the end of that Week 5 ball game versus the Kansas City Chiefs, and he's a guy I'm going to give the nod to one more time. And if he doesn't play in this game, I got Forster Monroe as a borderline start. Monroe last season had a few decent games when Waller was out for this Vegas Raider team, and Monroe, he missed the Week 5 game with an injury, but now with the bye week over and hopefully him healed up, I think he could be a guy you could use this week in fantasy lineups. He is Forster Monroe, but I got him as a borderline option only if Waller's out. If Waller plays, you're not going to use him. Now to the Chiefs at the San Francisco 49ers. Travis Kelce, he's a start each and every week. Good games here is Travis Kelce. I know the receiving yards have been down, but he always has the knack for the end zone. He'll be a top 1 or 2 option once again this week. George Kittle, best game of the season last week for him versus the Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta. So that's a good sign to see. And this is a ball game where they're probably going to be chasing points is San Francisco. If they can't get off to a good start, so I think George Kittle this week here is a good start at tight end. And now to Seattle Seahawks, the Los Angeles Chargers. So right here, Seattle, they've been playing good football this season the last couple weeks. Their passing game is opened up. I got Noah Fant as a borderline play this week. He's been a guy I mentioned as a pickup, and a guy that him and Geno Smith have had a good rapport over the last few weeks here. So Geno Smith, he's starting to get the ball to Noah Fant of late, and he's a guy I got as a borderline option. And on the other hand, Will Disley, he was a touchdown-dependent tight end over the last few weeks, but now he's a guy I can't count on. last couple weeks, less than 5 fantasy points 2 weeks in a row. And he's an easy sit this week. And then to the Los Angeles Chargers, Gerald Everett. It's been an up and down season here for him. And Keenan Allen might come back in this ball game as well. But it might open this field up more for Everett. And the only reason I got him as a start one more time here is Everett. The Seahawks give up the most fantasy points to tight ends on the season. So it's a plus matchup for him. Keenan Allen could be back. That will open the field up even more for Everett to get targets. And if he could deliver this week, we'll see about it. But I got him as a start because of the matchup and what I said. And now to the Steelers and the Miami Dolphins on Sunday Night Football. Right here, Pat Freiermuth in concussion protocol. Missed last week's ball game. But if he does play this week, I actually like the matchup for him. And he's a Mitchell Trubisky favorite if Trubisky's going to get the start with Kenny Pickett in concussion protocol as well. So I would have Freiermuth as a start. And if Freiermuth doesn't play in this game, I got Zach Gentry as a sit. Gentry, he looked decent a few weeks ago at Buffalo, but last week he didn't do anything in that ball game. So he's an easy sit. And now to the Dolphins side of things, Mike Gesicki, 2 touchdowns last week. But he's a guy that's been very fluky so far this season. He'll have one big game, disappear for 2 or 3 weeks, and then come back like he did in last week's ball game, finding the end zone twice for this Dolphin team versus the Vikings. But right here this week, I don't know if I could trust him as a full flight start is Mike Gesicki. So I got him as a borderline option. If he could go out there this week with Tua back in the lineup, supposedly here, and get the job done once again, then he's a guy to really consider as a start option. But this week here, I got him borderline. And now on to the last game of the Week 7 slate. Chicago Bears at the New England Patriots on Monday Night Football. So right here, Cole Kmet, he's had one decent game the whole season in 6 weeks. This Bear offense is a train wreck. You really don't want to deal with anyone on this offense besides David Montgomery for the most part, or Herbert, whoever would start for that team week in and week out. But anyway, Cole Kmet I have as a sit. He's not getting the job done. I know a lot of hype about him coming in to the offseason, but right here, he hasn't done anything. And it's not all Cole Kmet's fault. Justin Fields holds on to the football too much. Sometimes he tries to make too many things happen at once here, and Kmet's just not getting it done. So I got him as a sit. And now to the Patriots side of things, Hunter Henry, the last 2 weeks he's played good football and played well, finding the end zone last week. But right now, I don't know if I could completely trust him in this one versus the Chicago Bears. This defense, believe it or not, it's been pretty stout for the most part versus tight ends on the season. So Hunter Henry, yes, I mentioned him as a pickup on the waiver wire this week, but I don't know if I'll have confidence right away to throw him into the starting lineup immediately. This week, he might crack the top 12. You got to see how that goes when those rankings come out tomorrow. But Hunter Henry, I got as a borderline option. So that's tight end started sit of every game this week for Week 7 of the fantasy football season.